For joining us at our Cooler Talk with Rhonda and Cynthia. Today, our topic is about opinions and advice. Where do you stand? And we were talking about this, and it's kind of like, how do you handle a situation when somebody wants to give you advice when you're not asking for it?
Mhm,
And you might not even be receptive for advice.
mhm,
One way is just by saying, I appreciate your advice, but I'm much more receptive to opinions when I ask for them. And it sounds harsh,
yep,
but it's also harsh to throw your opinions at people when they
mhm,
haven't asked for them.
mhm,
And I mean, so like we were talking about last week about being present in conversations.
mhm,
And being present might be actively listening to see if the person says something like, "What do you think?"
yeah,
Or, "I'd really like your opinion on that,"
mhm,
instead of just throwing it at them.
mhm,
So how do you handle things like that? What's usually I just come right out and say, I'm much more receptive to opinions when I ask for them. And I don't go into this, "I'm sorry," and blah, blah. It's just like I just needed to air something out or express
mhm,
an opinion, or just maybe I'm trying to sort something through, and just talking it over with someone else kinda helps clear the air a little bit so I can get rid of the junk and think straight. I don't know.
mhm.
What do you think, Cynthia?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think while you were talking, I was thinking about how not to be that person who, gives unsolicited advice. Because I do think, it is in our to help people, and I think, um when we see that somebody's solution for that, let me jump in and give my advice. But in and giving somebody advice that they didn't ask for is a bit, like you were saying, it can either be arrogant or the timing just might not be right. Like that person might not be prepared to action on their grievance. They're still maybe just processing. And
Mhm.
they know that they'll come upon whatever it is that they need. And I did get to learn this early on with somebody I'm very close to, my brother. So I was probably in my 20s when he raised this with me, and he was like, sometimes I just say things to you because I want to tell somebody, not because I want to hear how you're going to solve it, Cynthia. and and it kind of, I mean, it threw me on my ass. And I was surprised because I'm the older sister, so I think I wanted to, help him along, but in some ways I was also judging him, by saying, "I don't think you're doing this the right way. Let me tell you how
Mm.
it's done." And so
Wow.
he was polite by telling me, he wasn't asking for my advice, and that was maybe the polite way of saying, "Mind your own damn business," which he has every right to do.
Yeah. Well, what do you do when you express I'm much more open to opinions when I ask for them, and then the person wants to argue with you or justify their behavior
Mhm.
instead of
Yeah.
just saying, "Oh, respecting your sovereignty,
Mhm.
accepting your sovereignty as a person."
Mhm.
And just saying, "Oh, okay, sorry, I just, it just kinda triggered something in me." Um,
Mhm.
and or just saying, "Do you what is wrong with saying, 'Do you want my opinion?' Or are you
Mhm.
just expressing yourself?"
Right. Well, actually you brought up the topic of presence. And I think this is actually an opportunity for both sides to be present. I think I have definitely said to my husband, because my husband's one of those people who likes to jump into action and give suggestions or ideas, and it's well intentioned. But sometimes I don't really want an action plan. I just want to vent. So I have gotten into the habit, particularly with him, to say, I'm about to tell you something, but I don't want your advice. So I'll tell him to shut up before he's even had the chance to start talking.
And this is maybe this is a pet peeve of mine. Maybe I'm an impatient person, but why do I have to explain that? Why would I have to explain go into an explanation of okay, I want to talk about something here, but I'm not looking for your advice. Why do I even have to say that?
Um, I think actually in some ways it shows. I mean, and this is me, especially in the context of my husband. It's one way of me telling him that I know him, I love him, I do trust what he has to say, but I'm not ready for him to insert himself on this topic. And so I think it kind of communicates both ways that, like, I love him and I do value his opinions, but I'm not ready yet to process his opinions. I'm still processing my situation.
Mhm.
Um, is it necessary? Well, we haven't gotten to the point where we can read each other's minds yet. Maybe in, 50, call me in 50 years and I'll let you know if we have that level of
Yeah.
understanding. But for
Yeah, because
now, I think,
my thinking is more like it's on you to ask the question. If you want to
hmm,
offer advice, it's on you to ask, are you looking for advice?
hmm,
That's kind of where I come from. Maybe I'm just a control freak.
yeah, I guess I don't try to think too much about like who plays what role in a, dynamic dialogue situation. I mean, certainly, I think if we were in a debate format, you have a moderator who says it's your time to make your statement, and now it's your time to rebut. Do you have a rebuttal ready? That kind of thing. But I think in a freewheeling
I like what you
dialogue
said though
relating,
about I like what you said about, with your husband because you're very close.
yeah.
And you know that he's gonna wanna give you advice.
And I
So
know that I'm not in a place to be taking it on
right.
yet.
So you let him know right up front, so that's very
Yeah.
considerate.
Hold your
You're
horses.
kinda like saying, "I really just need someone to listen to me right now."
Yeah,
So, yeah, I'm gonna have to change how I think.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
I mean, it's a
that works in
considerate
my
thing the way
relationship
you
with my husband.
what's that?
I said that works in my relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that at work. I don't know if I have done it at work. That's very interesting because
I
now we're
guess it
going into
does
like
help to
relational
preface
dynamics.
things, it's like we were and a few weeks ago, we were talking about, the "how are you" thing.
Ah, mhm.
And, I'm taking a step this all kind seems to interconnect because it's kinda like, "Hey, do you have a minute just to hear me out for a second? I need to blow off
Mhm.
some steam."
Mhm. Yeah.
And you're kinda respecting them by asking for their time.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
guess it goes both ways. That's, actually you've like added a depth to a very uh you've added depth to a very sort of like regular kind of interaction.
Yeah.
Like I'm imagining myself in a grocery store, at the checkout lane and the checkout person says to me like, "How are you? Hey, how are you?" And I say, I'm fine, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
how are
And in
you
that
really?
situation, they don't have time to hear how you really are. Or maybe they do,
I'm
but maybe the 6
feeling
people behind you might not be too happy about it.
right, right. Well, did we
Oh,
ask for their opinion? No,
oh boy. Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah, so, um, first off, it depends on one's attitude, and, you can show that you're irritated that they offered their opinion, but did you let them know up front you weren't looking for an opinion?
right.
Well, no, I usually don't. I don't feel like I have to say that. I just expect the other person to ask me. So maybe I can show a little more consideration by saying, I just need to talk about this, but I'm not
Mm,
looking for an opinion.
right.
I just need to talk.
I
And that kind of
actually
does set the stage. And then maybe
it
that
does.
person all of a sudden will be present. Okay, subconsciously they become
Yeah,
present in the
maybe.
conversation. Um, but asking, do you have time to talk?
Mhm.
So yeah, that would be courteous. So I'm starting to see ways where I can show more consideration of other people.
And actually, maybe even more consideration for yourself, because I think
Yeah,
when I like you actually challenged me to think about why I do this specifically with my husband. Um, because I do value his opinions. It's just that sometimes I know I'm not ready to like handle somebody else's. I'm like I know I'm not ready to handle somebody else's opinion yet. I'm still
right.
just trying to figure out what the landscape of my thoughts really looks like.
Yeah,
Um, and but I do think that that's in some ways like part of the love language, which is just saying like I just need to hear the sound of my thoughts outside of my head, but I don't want to hear your thoughts outside of your head.
yeah,
And I'll be prepared for that at a later
yeah.
stage because I know that it's probably not the last time I'm going to be processing that topic with him.
Motion
But
sensor light, huh?
no, it's on a timer
Oh,
and they're very energy sensitive
okay.
these days here. Um, yeah, but I think the other thing that like you really kind of tickled me about with this conversation is presence. Like I just realized now in our conversation that this topic of presence is actually on both sides. That like the advice giver needs to be present to the extent that that person needs to know did they are they even asking me or soliciting my advice, or are they trying to hear me? And then by the on the other side, like I can have presence about what I'm about to say or what I am saying, and just say like, hey, Rhonda, I'm just processing something here, just hear me out. You don't have to give me advice or your opinion. I just need to like put this out there. Um, and just, and I think it takes that presence on both sides to kind of signal, what kind of conversation are we having here? So I kind of like that perspective because think about, I didn't really think that like both sides actually have a role to play in the being present part of this. So, oh yeah. So are you a giver of advice or an asker of advice? Actually, I also find I am more ready to ask someone for advice when I'm ready to ask them for advice. I'm ready to hear advice when I'm ready to ask them for it, you know? You still there, Rhonda?
I am. I was typing.
Oh. Yeah. So it's a good topic. People are always flinging advice around.
I know. And that happened recently to me. And I it was like I was just stating a situation, okay, with I don't want to go into details.
Mhm.
Stating a situation, and then all of a sudden this person just starts throwing advice at me. This is what you should do, and this is
Yeah.
what you need to do.
Mhm.
And my response was, I just have to, you have to, I want you to know that I'm much more open to advice when I'm asking for it.
Asking for
And
it.
I wasn't asking for advice.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
she just wouldn't let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
She just went on and on to justify why
Yeah.
she was giving advice.
Mhm.
And I felt like I just felt like I was being forced upon.
Yeah. Maybe
Hello,
overrun.
Cynthia Callahan. Good morning. We're late too. We started, and then I realized on there. I don't think we're recording. I don't think we're live. So we just shut everything down and then restarted about 10 minutes later. So you're always on time, no matter when you show up, Cynthia. Thank
That's
you.
right.
Thanks for joining us.
You're always at the right place at the right time wherever you are. So, yeah, we were just talking about I fully agree with what you're saying, Rhonda, about
I
um
I felt
yeah.
I felt I felt like I felt like I was being violated in some respect. How do I explain that? Like
Well,
my domain was being trespassed on.
yeah.
That's how it felt.
And I do think it's important to not suck it up. Like if you're feeling that way, that is the perfect time to say, "Oh, you know, I'm sorry. I didn't ask for your advice. I was just telling you about something, like I'll get to it when I'm ready, or I'll ask you for your advice when I want to hear it."
It was like something happened, and I was just like, "Oh, cripe, blah 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 blah." And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, it was like, "Well, here's what you need to do," and here,
Mhm.
and see what I've learned to do. And no, I rarely offer advice, unsolicited advice anymore. I haven't done it in years, to
Mhm.
my knowledge. um, but and it was and I don't know. I just don't understand why. I think it's a bad habit.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's kind of like being a kid and you just express something you're really upset about, and then all of a sudden mom just starts throwing advice at you. I'm thinking of
yeah.
a teenager,
Mhm.
yeah, well, how well are you going to receive that? Not
Yep.
very well. And
Yep.
I'm I'm like that as an adult too, because if somebody does that, and thinking about it now, they're not present in the conversation. Maybe someone just needs a little validation, like, "I'm really sorry you're going through this."
Right. I
I
fully agree, and I guess I just want to kind of just add that lens or that angle that it could just be a spiritual opportunity to
Yeah.
defend yourself and say, "Hey, you know what? Like, I'll be ready to handle this when I'm ready to handle this. So, I haven't
Yeah.
asked you how you would handle this because I know I'll be ready. Like,
Yeah.
I'll
And
ask for your advice if and when I need it. Thank you.
here's another take. And I hear what you're saying, Cynthia. And, uh,
Ah,
we are
Cynthia, I feel
sovereign.
you
We are
too.
sovereign human. What?
I
We are.
feel what Cynthia just wrote in her comment.
Yeah. We are sovereign human beings.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and we have been given the right to free and gift of free choice and free
Mhm.
will.
Mhm.
And don't you think it's a little controlling when you completely throw out something somebody just said because you think what you have to say is more important than what they're talking about? Or, I mean, what are the intentions behind people that feel they have to trespass on your sovereignty?
Right. Or more so that they want to direct how you play out the next few steps in this play of your life.
Right. And then they
Yeah.
get offended
Yeah.
when you say,
Oh, no,
"Hey,
thank
look,
you.
Cynthia, I just want you to know I'm much more responsive to advice when it's given to me. When
When
it's
I ask
when I
for it.
ask for it."
Yeah,
I'm getting
when
all
I
mixed
ask
up.
for it.
Yeah, I'm much more responsive to advice when I ask for it, not when
Right.
it's forced on me.
Right.
And because now, you think about it, when someone does that, they're kind of invalidating you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like they're not, hello,
Yeah.
maybe I just need someone to say, look, I hear you.
Yeah.
I've been there myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Um,
guess so maybe that's part of like my answer to you about why I feel like I need to preface things with my husband because I know him, he knows
yeah,
me. And I cherish our relationship. And because of that,
yeah.
I want to make sure that he doesn't jump into action and try to problem solve. That
Which is
I'm
what,
basically telling him there isn't a problem to be solved. I'm just putting out all of the puzzle pieces, but this is still my puzzle. So
right, right, right. I
so
just,
just
I,
be there with me, be there for me, but like don't play with my
yeah.
puzzle.
Well, I live alone too, so I don't have these interactions to experiment with. Um, and um,
He's the only person that I've done that with. I'm
is
actually
he?
going to think about like whether I could bring it to the workspace, and come up with like a nice way of you know, saying that in in a work situation or a professional,
Yeah.
transaction type of situation,
Well, in a
you
work
know.
situation though, if you're in an idea exchanging situation, that in and of itself warrants throwing out ideas, which could be come in the form of advice or be interpreted as advice.
Mhm.
So I guess it depends on the situation.
Yeah, it does. And it depends on the situation, which goes back to presence, where, both sides really do need to show up and be present and kind of know, is this person asking for my advice? And
Mhm.
then on my side, let's say, I can also show up thinking like, am I putting this person in a position where I'm asking for his or her advice, or am I just venting? In which case, maybe I need to clarify, especially if it's a
Yeah,
person who thinks they love to just dole out advice.
yeah. Yeah, I think that it does sound like it's showing consideration of the other person,
Mm.
being more thoughtful of their situation.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
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 Especially, I think in the workplace, you also have those like manager subordinate type of dynamics. And so, like, you know, like maybe a subordinate will be like, hey, I've got this under control. And they want to be reporting to their manager that like there is a situation. But even if they have it under control, they're saying, hey, I'm not asking for your advice. I'm really just keeping you in the loop. Whereas the manager might be like, well, son, let me tell you, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've offered my opinion
Of course we have.
when it wasn't asked for.
Yeah.
Um, like if, if something if something triggers me, or if I
Mhm.
feel like someone's responding to me and it is completely unrelated to the question I just asked.
Mhm.
And that sometimes will trigger me to go off on a little tangent.
Mhm.
Um,
Because you're
maybe,
human.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like guilty as charged. I'm
Oh,
sure we
geez.
all have, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, guilty
Um,
as charged. You know it.
but
So
I
yeah,
think I had a wonderful coach. I've known her for many years, and she's not my coach. She's a friend of mine, but she told me not too long ago. Actually, she gave me some advice not too long ago, which was, things get a lot easier or smoother. Communication gets a lot smoother when you assume the best intention of whoever's talking to you. Um,
that puts a whole nother weight to it.
It does, and
Um,
so that goes back to the whole advice thing, right? Like, they have they have a best intention in mind.
but I know intuitively if someone doesn't have my best intention at heart. In
Sure.
fact, I know that when they're completely disregarding me.
Mhm.
And that I mean I find it so disrespectful when anybody throws something at you that's completely unrelated to the question you asked.
Mhm.
And it was
If you
only
ask the question.
yeah, and their answer had nothing to do with you but everything to them.
Right.
Again, going back to being present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
But,
we
you can
care enough
even
about the people we're interacting with to be present in the conversation?
yeah.
So that's a good question to ask oneself. Do I care enough about this person to be
Mhm.
present in the conversation?
Yep. And
Yeah.
when you do that, you can also pivot that conversation. I mean, and maybe you can even just point blank say, I know you have the best intention, but I'm actually not looking for advice. I'm just airing a grief. Like you were saying, and just kind of
Yeah.
like put it back in their court. Thank you for the advice, not taking it on.
And that's
Thank
a
you for your
gentler
best intentions.
that's that's a nice way to do it.
To
So
frame it.
ah
Yeah, I thought it was really useful actually that tip from her, and maybe I will try to see if I can insert that because I think it happens a lot in the workplace where there's that, manager subordinate, there's some generational um dynamics at play there as well. Um where you can say thanks. Yeah, I know you have the best intentions, but
it's
I
that
don't
but
need
word.
yeah.
I have a thing with that but word because
Add and.
you know, but the but or and the transitional words
Uh-huh.
um, can also be disregarding of what was said before that word came out.
Mhm. Yeah, use
And
and.
now I've had discussions with a couple people about that. And I guess it depends on which context it's being taken in. But sometimes it's like, oh, you have the greatest outfit on today, but I much prefer blue. You see what I'm saying about
Mhm.
the but word? What
Mhm.
so which part of that sentence did you hear the most?
Right. I much prefer blue.
Yeah.
I know you have the best intentions, and I appreciate your advice, and I'm not asking for it.
Oh, that wouldn't that irritate you though?
I mean, clearly you're irritated at this stage, right? Because you've gotten the
Yeah.
big butt already.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity. It's a good way of maybe flipping the conversation and also inviting the person to think about whether you actually ask them for their advice or opinion or not. And
Yeah.
somebody who's
So
going to be like really offended in that moment is
yeah,
not,
so you can avoid that offensiveness by saying what you do with your husband. I really need to run something by you, and I just want you to know I'm not looking for advice.
yeah,
Now that seems to be very neutralizing.
pretty much.
And then if they want to throw their advice at you anyway,
They
then you
don't,
can say,
or at least he
remember,
doesn't.
but someone who doesn't respect or understand, I don't know why I go back to this respect word. Um, but are they respecting you if they offer the advice anyway when you told them up front, I'm not looking for advice? But they had to give it to you anyway.
Yeah, well, I would say they're not respecting you, but I'm
Maybe
even wondering, like, is this somebody that you would really want to, like, air your grief with?
no.
Right.
Once you
Okay, thanks
learn
for
that
not
that's
listening.
yeah, once
Now I
once
know
you
who not
learn
to tell next time.
yeah, right. So, see, there you go. And there you go. You're gonna not that's not a person you've learned very quickly that that's not a person you can have that kind of conversation with.
Right. They failed the test.
Oh shucks, I really need to talk, but so and so's the one coming down the hallway. Forget it. It's not that important.
Right. Turn around, go to the other bathroom.
Just validate yourself.
Right.
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. So yeah, that can be quite a triggering event. I know I I have a friend who's got a big heart, and she is constantly telling me what to do and when, and I'm like, oh my god. I said, okay, this is yeah, I'm normally very easygoing. Normally, I'm very easy. My nature is to be very easygoing, and which means sometimes I just kind of, I just kind of wander about, in my own little world. And but if I know I have to be somewhere, I pay attention. But it's always one day I finally looked at her and I said, how in the world am I going to learn anything if you're always telling me what to do?
Yeah. Was this friend my mother?
It could have been my mother,
I don't
but she is a mother. And so I have
There
to,
you go.
and usually it's moms that do that. And, they're trying to mold those minds, and that becomes a habit that really carries through to adulthood. And and I don't think they realize what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it becomes kind of like a habit for moms. They spend the first few years of their young children's lives, feeling like they have to, avert their dangers and, show
Yeah,
them smooth paths and all of this. But like you're saying, how is that child ever going to know what, riding a bicycle is like if they don't even have the chance to fall off of it? So,
yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
um, anyway,
So, I mean, we can present the information to people, but they have to learn in their own experience. And it's
yep,
not until you have that experience that it's
yep,
going to connect, that the
yep.
dots are going to connect. And I think I told you last week I'm reading the book Conversations with God, rereading
Oh,
it.
mhm,
And a section I just read about was related to that, meaning that um, you have to have contrasts.
mhm,
There, it doesn't make sense until you've had the contrast. Then you
mhm,
understand what the contrast is.
mhm, mhm.
Could be good
Then
and
you
evil, but we created evil. I'm learning. I'm not going to go into that, but I like that. I like it. Gave me clarity about the contrasts and
yeah,
how you can prepare the student as much as you want, but until they have that living life experience to experience what someone's teaching them or telling them, it
mhm.
doesn't really sink in until that experience has
Nope,
occurred.
nope.
You can have a lot of head knowledge, but you know that's really not that has doesn't hold a candle to experience.
It doesn't. It does not.
So
Rhonda, we
yeah.
have we have gone
Oh gosh, yeah, we have.
above and beyond the time. I mean, we've been having fun and I've enjoyed every moment, but
I have too, and I hope our listeners have.
yeah.
Food for thought, opinions, and advice. Where do you stand?
I think
Um,
you and I we both concluded that we don't want it unsolicited. Which yeah. And I actually think yeah, it like you were saying, it really does take away the opportunity for that person to experience contrast or experience for
yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
So,
And with that, we're gonna say goodbye for now. And I wish everybody well. Namaste,
namaste.
peace,
Peace,
love.
light, and love be with
Yes.
you
Until the
and
next
Barnaby.
time. Bye bye.
Ciao for now.